Hello, everybody. Um, so this is going to be a cello chat about what happens after life in conservatories and dormitories stops and moves on to the professional world. Uh, or is there such a thing as a professional world? Actually, today there are actually so many more questions than ever before. Even somebody like me who's been playing concerts and teaching and doing all sorts of things related to music, I can't really give all the answers today. What's going to happen in 2 weeks, let alone in 2 years. But maybe we should start from the fact that there's something that nobody can really teach, or there's no common way of teaching what is going to happen when you close the door of a music school behind you and you have a piece of paper in your hand, or you don't have a piece of paper in your hand, or you've won a competition and you ask yourself, now what? Um, it's very tempting to have some kind of a security blanket. uh, for example, go from competition to competition and until as long as you can to get credentials, and not only credentials, but you get the security to yourself that you are actually working, you are succeeding, and you are somebody. But if that's not the way you choose, then there can be long moments of incertitude, um, where you just sit and wait and think, have I done the right choices? And what is it that really we can expect? We've learned the repertoire that is taught to us in schools, but is that going to be the repertoire that's going to be useful for me? And is that really where I want to live? Is the Haydn D major concerto the one piece that I always want to be proving myself with my value, or is there something completely different? And I think that what I try to tell people, young people I meet, and my students and students of other teachers, is that already when you are studying as early as possible, um, you should find out about every possible career for cellist, every possible life for cellist. You can think of, I see that somebody is already asking about contemporary music, but contemporary music is just one field. There's early music, there's orchestra, there's teaching, there's ensemble, there's piano trios, string quartets, new music ensembles. There's singer-songwriter. You can create your new or your own improvisation group. You can be your own band leader. These are all possibilities that are equally valuable, um, and yet I know that most of the people coming out of the conservatory are thinking of just one kind of a career. That there's that solo career that must be waiting for me, and yet we know that that doesn't demand just a certain kind of a talent, but it demands a certain kind of a personality. And in fact, all of these different careers demand their own kind of personality. If you see yourself working in an orchestra, living your life in a group um, of maybe 80, 90 people, and what that means, that means that you have to be able to function in that kind of a situation, or in a string quartet, you have to function in a group of four people with four minds, uh, that need to find out whose mind is the strongest, who needs to give in. Um, Not everybody is for any of these things. So I mean, nobody is for everything. Nobody is for even for several of these things. So, but you have to find out. You can't know unless you try. You can't know. Would I love playing Baroque cello unless you've tried it? You can't know would I love working with composers unless you've tried it. So somehow you have to get these experiences before it's before you are beyond the point of making choices. So I have Alexa here reading questions. Is there something that?
Yes, we have a question. When did you begin to feel independent after studying with your last teacher?
Well, I think my problem is that several of my teachers complained about my being too independent already, when I was a student. So personally, I think several of my choices were kind of obvious because of my independent mind. But when I felt any confidence about that, even that was something that I was very lucky in finding so many things that I was interested in, that I didn't have time to be afraid. I didn't ask myself, how am I going to make a living? How am I? Do I have? I just went and did. When I started meeting composers, I started working with them, making little groups with them. When I heard about Baroque cello, I found people with whom I did that, and we created our own little festivals. So I was very active in inventing stuff to do in order to try out things. But there were many other fields where I didn't get the experience until much later. In any other genres than classical music, for example, I was unfortunately very late bloomer in that. Um, I don't know if that answers the question. Is there anything else?
In many ways, it seems we are facing a blank slate in the art world where no one knows what's going to happen. From your point of view, what is the best possible outcome in the music world from such a difficult period as this? What would you like to see happen?
That's an easy question to answer. Um, um, I was quite, when we went into this confinement, after the first shock, I thought, well, this is a great moment to have discussions with everybody and to see, to analyze, was the world that was taken away from us suddenly, was that an ideal world? And if it wasn't, what don't we want to go back to? And but I haven't seen much conversation about that. Um, there are many aspects of the musical world that I would like to become more democratic, in the sense, for example, that um, the way classical music is expensive because some people make it so expensive, and other people have to do a lot of their other really talented people have to give their work for free. Um, this has nothing to do with talent. It's about who you are, where you come from, who you know, what circles you belong to, and I think there are plenty of people who could take a good cut in their fees and allow much more people come into the concert world. And if the organizers would believe that it's not only the name of a performer that fills the hall, that it's actually, we should go back to a world where the fact of a concert of a string quartet, cello recital or an orchestra concert as such is trustworthy and interesting. But we've gone so far from that. Now we live from a project to project. We have to immediately after we've finished one project, we have to invent something that we can sell as an idea to a promoter. And I think that's not why we are here as artists. But I don't know how to make that. I'm afraid I have very little influence myself to make that change.
What artists have been most influential to you in your career so far, and in what ways have they advanced your career in music?
Well, obviously, I've written about my teachers. So teachers were very important in forming me in many ways as a musician. But then afterwards, it's been friends. I've been really fortunate to be able to work with, to grow up with, first of all, with musicians of my own age, instrumentalists, composers, singers, with whom I've been able to collaborate and learn through their work. And then I've been even later. I was fortunate to meet some people, some great musicians. Again, not necessarily the ones that fill the Carnegie Hall every week, but just as an example, for some strange reason, at some point in the early 80s, I got together. I met Charles Rosen, the great musicologist, pianist, thinker, writer, and we played. We didn't play that many concerts together, but he had a flat in Paris, and he was an amazing mind and an amazing musician in the sense that he would, whenever he was in Paris, he would call me and I would go over with piles and piles of music, and in his tiny little flat with his upright piano, we would read through the whole repertoire. And I can't tell you exactly what I learned, but I learned more than I could possibly describe from those sessions, and that from just being around somebody for whom the history of Western music was just a living room. Then there have been other people like my best friend Oliver Nassen was a musician with whom I worked both as a cellist in an ensemble in the London Sinfonietta. We did many concertos together, and he was writing a cello concerto for me for about 16, 17 years, which he never finished. But we spoke daily, and we worked so much together. And his way of looking at music with the total naturalness of just doing it, not trying to prove anything, not trying to prove his own ego, or that it was just about the music. These are just two people, but there are more. I could give you examples throughout the whole night, and they are all equally important. But what I want to say is that neither of these people was a cellist. Neither of them was somebody that I would have expected to meet when I became a professional cellist. It was because I was ready to meet people and open-minded that I was able to learn from them.
Here's another question from Claire Hirsch. The world is changing so fast. The professional musicians we know are all at home. My 11-year-old son sees his own future as a cellist, sharing music with others, but I'm wondering, what hope is there for music making as a livelihood for a young person in the near future? Are you hopeful?
Well, I think we have to be hopeful. Um, it's the only way for humanity to survive is to be hopeful. Um, but by nature, I'm a pessimist. I live in a conundrum. Uh, uh, so I try always to find the hopeful aspect in everything. And the thing is that I think this full stop that we've come to suddenly, uh, we cannot find the same world when we come out of this. But every society in the history of humanity has needed culture. Culture has always been there. Music has been part of every society ever since the earliest men. So I don't think the need for us is going to disappear. What we have to now really, I think we have the responsibility to find in us the ideas that make us really part of the today's world. We've become marginalized. We've become outsiders who when people talk about what music concerts, they don't talk about our classical concerts anymore. That already a classical concert has to be explained to the general public. So we have to make sure that somehow the education children get at school includes music, it includes visual arts, it includes the so-called pejoratively called high arts. That this it comes to everybody's knowledge that we are part of the society and we are a necessary part, not in the same way as nurses and doctors, but even doctors and nurses need to listen to music when they in order to survive the horrible period that they've gone through.
Do you think it's important to go to a famous music school in order to have a successful career in music?
Nothing guarantees. Nothing is a guarantee for a career. I always shiver a little bit when I use the word career because I don't really know what I mean myself and what others expect me to mean. But famous music schools are as good as the teacher you and teacher and teachers that you find there, and famous music schools can also be good if they give you a wide education, if they allow you to be something else than just a cellist who practices 10,000 hours and then expects to have a career. I love those music schools where I see musicians studying something else than music, because our world is way too specialized, and our minds are fed this idea that we have no time to waste, and I think in many ways wasted time is the most valuable time, because you are doing something that opens you up. But there are many famous music schools where you meet great teachers. If you are lucky enough to get within a group of musicians of your own age who are not just wearing blinders to advance their own career, but who make chamber music with you, make new music with you, make old music with you, then you have the tools to have a life after the studies.
A lot of music schools emphasize the importance of marketing oneself and cultivating an image even before finishing school. From your experience, how much of this makes a difference in professional life?
Well, that's not the kind of background that I have, and it's very difficult for me to be impartial about that question, because I know that the young people of today cannot choose the world into which they were born. Therefore, if I was lucky never to have to market myself in order to get where I am today, I don't know if I should insist that everybody should have that luxury. I don't think. I feel that actually in today's musical world, I don't expect majority of people making their careers the way I have made mine. I used that word again. I shouldn't. But what I don't like, I don't like this thing that you take it for granted already when you are going into a school, that you have to sell every project, everything, every idea that you have has to be salesworthy. And I think there's maybe, I'm very, we all do some kind of marketing, which cannot be called marketing, but we all talk about our ideas. We all have ideas, and when there's somebody interested in what I do, and I find myself talking about my ideas, but I don't think of that as marketing. But to have to make marketing videos in order to get into a school, and then make that into your everyday work schedule. I think that's understanding something wrong. There's something much more, much bigger in our lives, and our career is something that we may do excursions to the market world, but at the same time we have to be able to think in the long term, and that the new pieces I learn, or my work with the Bach suites or the Dvorak concerto, that it's a job that's going to take me 40-50 years, and that has to be somehow possible.
What makes you passionate about contemporary music?
It's being part of it. It's being part of, I mean, I think everybody would be passionate about if we gave them the possibility of meeting Bach and Beethoven and Brahms, and getting the new piece, getting the messenger from Bach saying that I just wrote these pieces, do you want to try them? Can you imagine anything more exciting? And we can do this today, every day, and it's only through that you get an idea of what it is to be part of the music. That you can have enough closeness to the moment when the music was born, that there's almost no difference between you and the composer. So I don't see what there isn't to be passionate about.
Teaching is an integral part of a musician's career. How did you begin and develop your pedagogical skills?
Very slowly. I was for many years I was afraid of teaching, and I still would be afraid of teaching if I had to really pretend that I can teach somebody to play the cello. I don't think I can do that. But if I have talented people who have a fair knowledge of how to play the cello and who have more knowledge about and curiosity about music, then I feel that I can share my passions. I can share. I mean the first experience in teaching were like which it's a paradox because for me the first periods of experiences were actually master classes. I'm giving master classes without being a teacher. I felt for several years I felt kind of like a fraud, um, telling people what I think about certain pieces and how they should play them, and never meeting those people again, and just wondering, did I plant some seeds or did I just destroy people's illusions? But then and then out of this frustration and grew the need to actually be more in contact with people hoping to learn, and and then it started. Actually, also came through workshops that I did with young instrumentalists and young composers, where I saw that putting people together and letting people learn themselves, that it's not that I need to be giving just keys and answers and quick uh, um, uh, quick solutions. No, that it's that actually the real learning we learn ourselves. That whatever a teacher tells us, that's just a message. But that has not been learned until you integrate it to yourself. So I started hoping to get more of this, and luckily this École Normale in Paris offered the chance for me to have the size of a class that fits in my schedule, and I've been now doing it. I don't know exactly, maybe 7 to 10 years, and it's very exciting because these stereotype sentences that one learns so much by teaching. People have actually no idea how much one learns from teaching, because it's the more one has experienced, the more one has worked with every piece that you've worked, but you've worked it in your head, and you haven't actually needed to put things into words. And the moment you are talking to somebody who needs information, you suddenly have to put those things in words, and you realize that yes, actually, I have done the work. I have convictions that I can pass on, but that conviction, you didn't know that you had it until the moment came that you actually passed it on.
How do you choose students? What aspects are important to be chosen as an advanced student?
For me, curiosity is actually one of the most important things that I would look for in somebody. I would hope that the person who I'm choosing has already fair capacities to attack any repertoire, and that I can help in solving problems, technical problems, but a healthy ground to play a big repertoire is important. But what is most important is that you are curious and interested in broadening whatever you came to go out with more ideas than when you came in to my class.
What advice could you give to someone who is beginning to study Sept Papillon?
Sept Papillon by Kaija Saariaho. It's one of the probably one of the most often played recent pieces for cello, and I've coached it countless times, and I think one of the things that I most often tell people when they play that for me is that try to see what is classical in that piece, in the sense that what is recognizable in that piece, because it doesn't look on the page when you get that music, it doesn't necessarily look like any other piece that you've played before, but in fact it's made from the same kind of building blocks than any music. Every music somewhere deep down has phrases, has emotions, has transitions, has climaxes, and when you move away from the immediate scariness of the page and look from a bit further away, you start seeing that, okay, this is made, so here's a phrase, here's another phrase, and this phrase gets longer, and that's the culmination, and so you are already then you see it as something that you can recognize, and then you have to think of the title, seven butterflies, and what could she mean with that? Am I supposed to see butterflies when I practice it until I see butterflies, or are they in my stomach? What's with the butterflies? You have to take it as a metaphor, and a metaphor of something that is ephemeral, but also eternal, and you can find. In fact, I'm not going to give all my secrets because that would be useless without having the personal contact. But all of those 7 movements, if you spend enough time with them and you are open, or you let the music get into you, you find those butterflies. They have a metaphor that you can take, and you can feel them, and you can feel the drama, and you can feel the drama built from incredibly small amount of material sometimes, but the drama is as big as in a Bruckner symphony, if you wish, if that's what you like. But well, that's a short answer.
Summer is coming. Young cello players usually join camps at this time. In this world suffering from the pandemic, do you have any suggestions for young cello players in the summer?
Well, for this particular summer, it's very difficult to give any advice, because I have no idea which camps survived the pandemic. I'm sure actually that there are even some of those summer camps that were originally cancelled are probably going to be held one way or another, we managed to. I do something which is not a cello camp as such, but a workshop that I do every year called Creative Dialogue, and we had to cancel it. It was supposed to happen in Santa Fe, New Mexico this year, and when the crisis started, we had to cancel it. But then we realized that actually we can do an online session in a different way, and it's going to be actually probably it's going to be a unique session because we bring back students from previous years and we open it up. So we managed to, by thinking creatively, keep something not only alive but make something exciting. So I think you should just look around and keep your fingers crossed. I'm sure that many of these summer camps will come up with ideas that allow you to find something new. And if it's not a cello camp, maybe you find a chamber music workshop or something else, an improvisation workshop or jazz workshop. If you don't find your own the thing you wanted to study, go and study something else. I'm sure you can find something.
What is your advice for networking in the music industry?
Now that was two words that one has to explain. One has to first of all know what we are talking about. As I said earlier, when we spoke about marketing, is that if I'm talking about my passions to somebody who shows interest, is that called marketing? If I talk to people after concerts and if I make friends, is that called networking? And what was the other word?
Industry.
In music industry. Well, now that's a word that I don't like because I don't see what is an industry in what in this world that we live in. I think we should fight that idea because industry, it somehow puts us into a situation of competition, growth, values. And I would prefer to stick with make friends, find influences. Yes, do talk about who you are, what your passions are to people who can program concerts. That's absolutely fine. That's essential. We need to find people. We need to find people and tell them that there's all this that I do, there's all this that she or he does, and why don't you program all these things? I think we have, especially right now after this crisis, we should try and eliminate the aspects and the words that don't belong to the building blocks of art.
What is a recent musical discovery that has made you particularly excited? A composer, a piece, etc.
Well, there was something that happened to me. I mean, I'm sure we all have had to find the meaning of life during these 2 last months, and what happened to me after the initial first 2 weeks when I first felt that, oh, this is wonderful, there's no engagements, nothing, I have no stress. Then of course I felt that, wait a minute, I can't just stop being a cellist and musician, but I couldn't concentrate on work until I realized that, oh, I had composer friends who had written these pieces for me, which I was supposed to play in these months, but now no concert. So what am I to do? I took my 2 iPads and my Zoom recorder and put myself in front of this thing behind me, and made videos and edited them on iTunes, iMovie, and put them on YouTube. And the interesting thing was that one of the first things I put was a tiny little, really, when I say a tiny piece, it's really a tiny piece, by my friend Oliver Nassen, who had written a little birthday card of a cello piece for my other composer friend Kaija Saariaho, 2002, which I had never played, and I decided, okay, I'm going to record that, and I put it out there, and as soon as some of my other composer friends saw it, they wrote to me that they are having trouble composing at the moment, but actually, because they heard this piece by Olli Nassen, who was their close friend, would I mind if they wrote a little cello piece? So I suddenly got these several pieces that came by email, and I put myself again in front of this same paravent and recorded them, edited them, had fun learning about video editing, and put them out there. This was something that I've never done this way before. I've learned new pieces before, but I had never learned them the same day they came by mail and sent them out to the whole world to see, you know, in my imagination, the whole world. But anyway, out there. So this is just a sign that big things can come from small ideas, and this gave meaning for my 6 weeks of confinement. And I did collaborations with, I did improvisations with my wife, who's a visual artist, with my choreographer friend in Buenos Aires, who went on the roof of her building, filmed herself, her shadow on the wall as she was improvising a dance, and I improvised on that, put it together on a video, and out it went. So, you know, that was very meaningful for me. And other than that, you know, there've been lots of normal kind of collaborations with composers, but that's more usual in a way.
Do you happen to know any musicians who started their careers unusually late in life? How might a person who is older than conservatory age initiate a career?
It's hard for me to think of an example just like that, but I know that while most musicians who make their life in music started very early, there are many examples of players, especially singers, who study something else, and somebody hears them sing and says that you will be the next so and so, and that happens all the time. With instrumentalists, for example, my teacher in Finland, a great cellist, Erkki Rautio, I think he started playing the cello at 16. The thing is that starting later can be a disadvantage in some ways in the dexterity, but it can also be an advantage because you have the intelligence to jump over obstacles. But I don't know exactly what age you are talking in this question, but still, I think with passion and with hard work and passion, you can do a lot of things. And again, if you don't expect to be just that one thing, to be Jascha Heifetz, or Piatigorsky, you can find your place if you are ready to accept what you can offer.
Have there been any specific challenges in your career, and if so, how did you overcome those obstacles?
Well, there have been many different kinds of. We can go through many. There have been physical challenges. There was a time once in Cologne. I was going to a rehearsal of Britten Cello Symphony, and I took my bow out and I started tightening the bow, and I realized that I couldn't touch the bow. I every time I touched the bow, I got an electric shock in my index finger, and I tried to go get through a rehearsal, but after the first page, I had to get up and say, "I'm sorry, I can't play." And there was a very black week after that, because I came back to Paris and found the most famous hand surgeon, who told me that there's nothing he can do and except to offer me to propose that I find a new profession, and that wasn't a nice thing to hear. But I came over it because I found somebody, a great doctor in Hanover, who was able to help me, and within 1 month I was back playing and performing. I needed to cancel 1 month's worth of concerts, but that was a difficult moment, and since then I've learned to listen to my body and for signs of anything that might go wrong, and I've become very conscious, and I try to why I talk about this, because I think that we all should be very conscious of the fact that it takes very little to stop our professional life. So we need to look after ourselves. So that's one thing. Of course, there have been also things when I felt that suddenly I have 3 months without a concert, and personally I would have thought that I deserved to have concerts during those 3 months. So I had to just accept the situation that that is what it is, and I need to find some meaning for my life during those 3 months. And in some of those periods, I started making transcriptions. I've spent months and months doing transcriptions like the Brahms Piano Quintet to 4-string quintet, the reconstruction, or Schumann Album für die Jugend for string trio. These are things that come out of my passion, but they also fill those moments of doubt when I don't know how to cope. So I go and bury myself in another one of my passions. I think our dog did something in the kitchen.
What composers should young performers be aware of, and how do you recommend introducing oneself to contemporary music?
Let me just close that door. It is closed. Okay. The thing about me telling who are the interesting composers is not a very useful question, because there are as many interesting composers as there are tastes for different kinds of music. So we need to find, again, it's a question of listening a lot. You have to listen. That's the only way to learn, is to listen a lot, of not to be afraid. And how to get into that world, it's just by, if somebody tells you that person there is a composer, you go and talk to that composer and say that I'm a cellist and I'm interested, can you show me your music? And that's all it takes. That's how Rostropovich did every time he was introduced to a composer. He immediately asked for a piece, and he, thanks to that, we have countless great pieces. We have also even more pieces that Rostropovich played once or twice, which didn't become part of the mainstream repertoire, but which are there, and maybe one day they will, or then they don't. But in order to have one masterpiece, one piece that is considered universally as a masterpiece, you probably have to have 150 pieces, but you have to have those pieces. And some of them are also masterpieces, but they appeal to less people. But they will, each one of them is likely to find somebody who's passionate about them. So the Cello Bello website has a page about 20th century cello repertoire, and it's very interesting because I, who play a lot of contemporary music, there's very little music there that I personally know. So that just shows that it's always a personal taste. I've tried to contribute by collecting lists of repertoire. There's one which is also on Cello Bello website, which I call the Instead list, where I pair an unknown piece to a too well-known piece. But then later than that, I've been working on simply on Wikipedia, because I consider that this should be open to everybody. I've been adding hundreds of cello concertos. I've been just going through lists of every composers from different countries, composers that I don't know myself, and I've added them to the list of cello concertos and lists of cello and piano pieces. And while I've been doing that, I've been clicking and listening to some of them, and I've discovered already lots of new pieces. So that's all it takes. Listen, and the moment somebody points out to a composer to you, go and talk to that person.
What is one of your fondest memories from your conservatory days?
Well, I left the conservatory at 17 in Finland, and from then on, all my studies in England and Holland, I did. I only took private lessons, which made me a bit of a hermit. But so I didn't meet that many people after I was 17 in the student world. But in those years, in my conservatory years, what would be my fondest memory? It was actually the first chamber music experience, I would say, when the discovering the that depth of music that there is outside the cello lessons, and to find that I was at 16 passionate about playing what was the Schumann Fantasiestück for piano trio, which is still almost never ever played, and there are very few recordings of it. But I got passionate about that at the age of 16, and with the first group, little trio that we had, we rehearsed that. We never even performed it. I still haven't performed that piece, but that passion is still inside me. I am going to play that piece one day. So that kind of discoveries, and also the endless conversations at the cafeteria to avoid going home and practice, arguing about what's important for a little cellist like what we were, and that they are no good, we are much better, and of course. It's comical when you look at it from this perspective, but it's what one has to go through, and it's part of evolving in a group.
Recently, I watched a conductor chat where one of the conductors highlighted that classical music is very slow in adapting to the use of technology. Do you agree with this? If so, what are some ways that we could use technology to better our art?
Well, I don't think we. Well, the thing is that there are many aspects of classical music that uh, don't um, don't need technology. I mean, a Beethoven piano sonata needs a piano, a Bach suite needs a cello, um, um, orchestra needs an orchestra, but in order to reach an audience, you may you may need technology. So that's where, for example, my own tiny little example of making these videos when I had no other way of getting to an audience, just that in fact we have unbelievable technology in our hands, in our homes today, that we could make something. I mean, lots of people recorded Bach suites and posted them on Facebook, but we can do much more than that. That I think that's an example of that there's you can be more creative than just trying to use technology to promote yourself. Um, that was one of the disappointment that I found among our colleagues was that the lack of curiosity and search of something interesting to do. We all know that everybody loves Bach suites. We all know that everybody loves the Swan. We all know that the Meditation de Thais is a beautiful piece, but to have just like that the 90% of the videos during the confinement were these three things. Um, I find that's where the classical world is still not using technology for what it's there for. I think we can do more. Um, and now that we can't just go back to fill the Carnegie Hall with how many people does it take? 2,500 people. Um, we can reach the audiences. Probably we have to develop the means to reach the audiences as well as possible. Uh, and also, but one has to accept that the fact it's very difficult to sit in front of a computer screen and listen to a Bruckner symphony. Um, Listening to, you know, Tristan and Isolde or the Beethoven Ninth Symphony or Berlioz Coro, you need to be in a place where the outside world doesn't send you Facebook messages and stuff. So we have to develop. It's not as simple as just beaming it out there. We need to develop situations in which it is possible to listen to something that demands concentration. Unfortunately, classical music is not just 5-minute pieces. Uh, uh, so we need to do this work. We need to develop technology and our own perception of technology into something that makes it really useful.
What do you do when you don't feel like practicing?
I don't practice. Uh, it's very simple. Um, every day I do countless things while I try to persuade myself to get to the cello. And I know I have lots of colleagues who are much more um, uh, much better at working than I, but they probably also have a schedule that demands them to be ready all the time. I'm learning new pieces a lot of the time, and learning new pieces is actually it fits my temperament because I've learned that I don't learn them only by practicing. I have to I have to move around these pieces. I have to read them a lot. I have to read about them. I have to listen to the same composers' other works. I have to very often I spend lots of time copying my part, making reductions. So I'm living with the piece I should be practicing. but actually I'm making sure that I only need to practice the really bare necessary time, because I also want to keep the freshness of a performance. But I even in my practice I work from two ends. I don't believe in practicing from detail to detail. I believe in practicing the big picture and learning first what the piece is about, what the technical difficulties are, where are the most difficult bits, and where are the bits that will take care of themselves. And then once I noticed that, okay, that bit took care of itself, I learned it without really concentrating on it. But this bit didn't. So then I know that, okay, for that bit I need a certain amount of time, hopefully. And hopefully that's enough, but that's what my experience tells me. But meanwhile, I've been living with the complete piece, and actually, for most part, I find that if one accepts to live this kind of a tightrope life that my working method is, most of the things that make you lose your balance at the beginning of learning a piece take care of themselves, and then you can spend the really necessary time on those things that really need that. How are we with time?
It is 7.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all these questions. It was a very interesting conversation, and see you soon.